Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the strange, shimmering landscape of dreams. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now, feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into the mystery of dreams together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Dreams are something you know well, even if you don't often remember them. You may have drifted through one just last night, a jumble of familiar faces, impossible places, and half-forgotten worries stitched into a surreal performance. Some dreams feel like nonsense stitched together from fragments of the day, spilled coffee, snippets of conversation, the last song you heard before bed. Others carry a sense of weight, a strange significance that lingers after waking, as though you brushed against something larger than yourself in that private theatre of the night. And then there are the dreams that slip away almost instantly, vanishing like mist in the sunlight, leaving you with only the faint sense that something happened, something you can't quite name. For thousands of years, humans have asked the same question you might have whispered to yourself in the morning light. What are dreams for? Are they just random sparks in the brain, a kind of internal static? Or do they hold meaning, perhaps even messages, beyond what we can measure? Tonight, we won't be rushing toward an answer. Instead, we'll wander gently through the possibilities, like stepping into a quiet gallery where each painting shows a different vision of the mind at rest. From the ancient belief that dreams were omens from the gods, to the modern laboratories that measure brain waves with glowing machines, to the personal sense that sometimes dreams feel more real than waking life, we'll drift through them all, softly and slowly. As you settle deeper into the story, it helps to think of dreams not as puzzles you must solve, but as companions you carry with you every night. They may be nonsensical companions, showing up in roller skates or whispering in a language you don't speak, but they are part of you all the same. You may forget them when the alarm clock rings, yet they return faithfully, waiting each night like actors behind a curtain, rehearsing scenes you'll only half remember. Science, of course, has tried to lift the curtain. Neuroscientists place electrodes on sleeping volunteers, tracking the rhythms of the brain, the way the eyes dart beneath closed lids, the subtle shifts of breathing and heart rate. They can tell you when a dream is most likely happening. They can describe the orchestra of activity playing inside your skull, even as your body lies still. But for all the instruments and charts, science has not fully explained why dreams feel the way they do, why they can stir such deep emotions, or why some slip away while others stay etched in memory for a lifetime. That perhaps is part of the wonder, that dreams remain one of the few everyday mysteries science hasn't pinned down. Think of the paradox. You spend nearly a third of your life asleep, much of it dreaming, and yet this enormous territory of experience remains largely unmapped. Imagine if a third of Earth's surface was still blank on the map, marked only with the words, "Here be dragons." You would expect explorers to rush there immediately. And yet the dream world, this inner continent, remains half-hidden, mysterious, and softly evasive. Every night, you sail its shores without ever needing to pack a bag, and every morning you return with only scraps of memory, sometimes a vivid scene, other times nothing but the faint taste of something strange. Perhaps this is what makes dreams so compelling. They belong to everyone, they arrive uninvited, and they remind you that the mind is not fully under your control. No matter how carefully you plan your day, your night is always a little unruly, a little unpredictable, a little magical. And so, as we begin this quiet exploration, let us loosen our grip on certainty. Tonight we'll ask, without needing immediate answers, whether dreams are random or purposeful, whether they are closed loops of memory or open doors to deeper dimensions. We will explore the science that shows how the brain flickers and glows at night, and we will also listen to the stories people have told about dreams for thousands of years. Stories of guidance, of warnings, of creativity, of transcendence. Somewhere in between the hard data and the soft myths lies a truth that may not be easy to measure, but can certainly be felt. So, as your body settles comfortably, perhaps you can feel the gentle pull of gravity holding you close to the bed, or the quiet hum of a fan smoothing the edges of silence. Let your mind soften into curiosity. We're not here to force conclusions. We're here to wander, to drift, to let the science and the stories of dreaming unfold like a slow-motion film in the background of your thoughts. Whether you stay awake to the end or slip into sleep halfway through, the story will be here, carrying you gently into the theatre of your own mind. If the first step of our journey was simply opening the theatre doors and acknowledging that dreams are mysterious companions, then the next step is to glance back through time and see how people before us made sense of these nightly visions. After all, long before brain scanners and sleep labs, long before psychology and neuroscience gave us complicated diagrams, human beings were already lying down under the stars, closing their eyes and waking with stories from the dark. Dreams were not simply odd experiences to them. They were woven into religion, medicine, art, and even politics. To dream was to open a channel to something larger than yourself. In ancient Mesopotamia, more than 4,000 years ago, clay tablets were inscribed with dream interpretations. A farmer might record that he dreamed of a flood. A soldier might note that he saw lions prowling in his sleep, and a priest would carefully match these images with elaborate lists of omens. Dreams were considered divine telegrams, short symbolic messages sent from gods or spirits. To ignore a dream could be dangerous. To understand it might offer safety, prosperity, or a glimpse of the future. If you dreamed of an eagle, perhaps a journey awaited. If you dreamed of collapsing walls, perhaps danger was near. This was the first curtain call of the dream theatre. Visions not as private curiosities, but as public signs to be read and acted upon. Travel further west, and you find ancient Egyptians cultivating entire temples devoted to dreams. They practiced dream incubation, where a person would sleep in sacred chambers, hoping to receive healing or prophecy through their dreams. Imagine lying down on a stone bed in a temple thick with incense, the flicker of oil lamps casting shadows across painted walls, and drifting to sleep with the hope that a god might step into your dreams with advice or cure. To them, dreams were portals to the divine, as real and as practical as a physician's prescription. Then came the Greeks, who layered philosophy onto this dreamscape. Aristotle, ever the observer, suggested that dreams came not from gods but from within the body. He thought they were echoes of the day, impressions carried into the night. In his view, a dream of running across a field might simply be the body remembering the sensation of exercise. This was a quieter, more rational approach, stripping away the divine messengers and replacing them with the rhythms of the body itself. Yet, even he could not explain why dreams felt so vivid, so emotionally charged. Fast forward many centuries, and the fascination with dreams never truly faded. Medieval scholars debated whether dreams were temptations or warnings. Renaissance artists painted dream visions into their canvases, letting strange figures and surreal landscapes spill into waking art. By the 19th century, in the candlelit rooms of Vienna, a physician named Sigmund Freud brought dreams back into the spotlight with an intensity not seen since antiquity. To Freud, dreams were the royal road to the unconscious. He believed that within every dream lay a hidden wish, often unacceptable or forbidden to the waking mind, disguised in symbolic costumes. A dream of climbing stairs might be about ambition or something more intimate. A dream of a locked box might hide unspoken fears. His interpretations were controversial, often more reflective of his era than of universal truth. But his insistence that dreams mattered sparked a revolution in psychology. Carl Jung, once Freud's student and later his critic, added his own layer of mystery. Jung agreed that dreams carried meaning, but he felt they weren't just about hidden personal desires. Instead, he proposed that dreams connected individuals to a vast collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of symbols, myths, and archetypes that humanity carried together. The wise old man, the hero's journey, the shadow self. These motifs appeared not because your brain was recycling yesterday's worries, but because, according to Jung, you were dipping into a deeper ocean of human experience. A dream of a serpent, for instance, wasn't just your private nightmare. It was a thread in a tapestry woven across cultures and ages. Meanwhile, as the 20th century marched forward, science began to put electrodes on sleeping heads. The discovery of REM sleep in the 1950s was a turning point. For the first time, researchers could watch the body twitch, the eyes dart and the brain flare with activity while a person dreamed. No gods or archetypes required, just measurable cycles, patterns, and electrical storms. Yet even here, the mystery didn't dissolve. If anything, it deepened. The more precisely we measured the brain's rhythms, the stranger it seemed that such chaotic sparks could produce the coherent, emotional, story-like experiences we call dreams. And so you can see, across millennia, the theatre of dreams has played many roles. To the ancients, it was a temple stage for gods. To philosophers, a window into bodily processes. To Freud, a coded diary of desires. To Jung, a doorway into humanity's shared symbols. To neuroscientists, an active brain state still only partly understood. Dreams have been prophets, puzzles, symptoms, and simulations, sometimes all at once. And here you are tonight, inheriting this long tradition of wondering. Perhaps what unites all these perspectives is not their answers, because they often contradict one another, but their recognition that dreams cannot be easily dismissed. Whether you see them as random firings or sacred messages, as wish fulfillment or a memory rehearsal, they command attention. The dream you had last night, as fleeting as it may seem, is part of a conversation that has stretched across centuries, whispered by countless sleepers in countless languages. So, as we pause here, standing at the threshold between ancient temples, philosophical scrolls, and glowing modern sleep labs, let the weight of that history settle softly around you. You're not the first to wonder why you dream, and you will not be the last. Every time you close your eyes, you step onto a stage where humans have performed for as long as we've had the gift of sleep. The curtain rises, the play begins, and though the plot may be strange, it is always your own. When you drift off to sleep, it can feel like stepping into a single, continuous stretch of darkness, as though you simply close your eyes and wake up hours later. Yet beneath that apparent stillness, your brain and body are moving through an intricate choreography, repeating patterns that scientists have come to call the architecture of sleep. It is not a straight descent into unconsciousness, but more like a gentle spiral staircase, with landings and turns, each stage offering its own mood, its own work, its own contribution to the mystery of rest. The very first stage, known to researchers as N1, is the drowsy threshold. It is that hazy zone when you're not quite awake, but not entirely asleep either. Your thoughts slip from logic into drifting images, your muscles relax, and sometimes you feel that sudden jolt as if you're falling through space. Many people mistake that for a strange dream, but it is really your nervous system misfiring slightly as it lets go of wakefulness. Imagine it as the flickering of a projector warming up before the film begins. This stage lasts only a few minutes, but it is the softest and most fragile of all. You could be awakened by the faint creak of a floorboard or the quiet buzz of a phone and insist, perhaps with a sleepy smile, that you hadn't actually been asleep at all. If you manage to stay undisturbed, you descend into N2, light sleep proper. Here, the body becomes more serious about shutting the doors to the outside world. Your breathing steadies, your heart slows, your temperature dips, and your awareness of the room fades into the background. Inside your brain, bursts of activity appear like tiny sparks. Scientists call them spindles and K-complexes, but you might think of them more like sudden flares of fireflies against a night field. They are protective bursts guarding your rest by keeping you from waking up every time a sound or shift occurs. It is in this stage that you spend about half your night, quietly suspended in a rhythm that is neither too deep nor too light, a kind of hammock between waking and dreaming. Deeper still lies N3, sometimes called slow wave sleep, or deep sleep. If the earlier stages were the gentle overture, this is the powerful, resonant movement of the night's symphony. Your brain pulses in slow, rolling waves, like tides sweeping across a beach in the dark. It is here that your body does its most important housekeeping. Muscles repair themselves, bones strengthen, the immune system refreshes, and in children, growth hormone flows, stretching their small bodies for the day to come. If someone tries to wake you from this stage, they will find you groggy, confused, as though yanked out of a warm bath into cold air. Deep sleep is not easy to surrender once begun, and that stubborn heaviness is part of why it is so restorative. Yet, even as important as deep sleep is, it is not where the wildest dreams unfold. For that, the staircase must loop upward again, bringing you into the strange luminous chamber known as Greets. Sleep, rapid eye movement. Here, the body is paradoxical. The brain blazes with activity almost as lively as waking life. The eyes dart back and forth beneath closed lids, and yet the muscles of the body are held still, paralysed by a kind of protective lock, preventing you from acting out the dream scripts unfolding within your mind. It is as though the theatre is fully alive with music, costumes and performers, while the audience, you, sits motionless in your seat, unable to leap onto the stage. This cycle, light sleep, deeper sleep, REM, repeats itself like a playlist on loop, each cycle lasting about 90 minutes. In the beginning of the night, the deeper stages dominate, as if your body knows that the first order of business is repair and renewal. Later, closer to dawn, REM stretches out longer and longer, like extended encore performances. This is why the dreams you remember most vividly often come in the early morning hours. You've been rehearsing all night, and by the end, the performance is at its most elaborate. When you think of it this way, the idea of sleep architecture becomes more than just a clinical term. It's a castle with many chambers, a layered journey you take again and again each night. Sometimes you rush through the halls, sometimes you linger, but always the cycle returns, steady and silent, even when you are unaware of it. Without this rhythm, you would not wake refreshed, your memories would not settle properly, your emotions would remain jagged and raw. It is the hidden maintenance schedule of the body and the mind, a blueprint drawn by evolution and carried out faithfully every single night. And within this cycle, nestled particularly in the glowing, flickering world of REM, are your dreams. They are not sprinkled randomly across the night, but are tied intimately to these stages. Some dreams emerge in the lighter zones, half thoughts, half images, but the true spectacles, the vivid adventures, the impossible stories, those flourish when the brain's theatre lights blaze in REM. This is why understanding the structure of sleep is so important for understanding dreams. Without the context of the architecture, dreams are just strange anecdotes. With the architecture, they become part of a larger picture, the nightly symphony of body and brain working together. So tonight, as you drift, remember, you're not simply falling unconscious. You're moving through chambers, through layers, through stages designed to carry you toward renewal. Each twitch, each dart of the eyes, each deep sigh of breath has a place in the architecture. It is a house you return to every night, even if you never remember its rooms, and somewhere in that house, behind one of those doors, lies the theatre of dreams, waiting for its next performance. If the architecture of sleep is the great house through which you wander each night, then dreams are the glowing lanterns that flicker in some of its hidden chambers. To understand them more clearly, it helps to pause for a moment and look at what your brain is actually doing in these luminous stages, not through the harsh lens of cold technical language, but through the gentler imagery of a night garden filled with unexpected lights. When you slip into REM sleep, your brain, which seemed so quiet just moments earlier during the slow, deep waves of N3, suddenly erupts into activity. Electrical patterns ripple across the cortex, rapid and unpredictable, almost as if someone has opened every window of a house and let in a storm of fireflies. The visual areas at the back of your head sparkle brightly, conjuring landscapes and faces and scenes with cinematic clarity, even though your eyes remain closed. Meanwhile, the emotional centers buried deeper inside, particularly the amygdala, that almond-shaped knot of nerves, light up as if they have been waiting all day to play their music. That is why your dreams are not just pictures but dramas, infused with joy, fear, longing, and sometimes inexplicable sorrow. Yet, even as these regions blaze with activity, another part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, grows quiet. This is the rational governor of your waking life, the one that normally insists on rules, logic, and calendars. In REM, it pulls back, perhaps like a stern librarian who has gone home for the night, leaving the rest of the staff free to run wild through the stacks. Without that strict oversight, the stories of dreams become wonderfully illogical. Cats speak in riddles, gravity forgets its job, and you accept it all without question, because the voice that normally says, "That makes no sense," has drifted off to rest. Meanwhile, another curious shift occurs in the hippocampus, the structure responsible for taking daily events and locking them into long-term memory. During waking hours, it works diligently, like a meticulous archivist cataloguing each new file. But in REM, that archivist dozes. This explains why dreams are so difficult to remember. Even if you wake with a vivid story in mind, it slips away quickly because the very system designed to record experiences has been dialed down. It is like trying to sketch a passing cloud with a pen that keeps running out of ink. You may capture a shape or two, but the details fade even as you try to hold on. Still, the paradox remains. If dreams are so ephemeral, why do they feel so real while you're in them? Part of the answer lies in the intensity of sensory regions, which are almost as active in REM as when you are awake. The brain is staging a full production, recruiting sets, actors, costumes, and emotions, even if the stage manager is off duty. The result is an experience that convinces you utterly while it lasts. You're not imagining flying, you're flying. You're not watching yourself take an exam unprepared. You're truly sweating under the fluorescent lights of a classroom that doesn't exist. The dream world borrows the machinery of waking perception and paints new realities with it. Scientists have long puzzled over this strange combination: visual fireworks, emotional storms, and logical silence. Some argue that it explains why dreams are so wildly creative, full of bizarre juxtapositions that still manage to feel meaningful. Others suggest it reveals why dreams are often emotionally charged but fragile in memory, like sparks that flare brilliantly in the dark and then vanish as soon as the dawn arrives. You can picture it like this. In REM sleep, your brain is a city at night. The downtown lights blaze in bursts of colour, the theatres are alive with performances, the music halls resound with passionate crescendos. But the city council chamber is dark, locked, and silent. Streets curve in ways they never do in daylight. and alleys appear that you have never walked before. You, the dreamer, wander through this nighttime city without a map, surprised at every turn, sometimes frightened, sometimes elated, always carried forward by scenes that feel both foreign and deeply personal. It is worth noting that this city is not entirely sealed off from waking life. What you did during the day, what you studied, worried about, laughed at, can slip into its streets and appear as characters, props or plot twists. But once inside the dream city, they are rearranged, recast, sometimes unrecognisable. A casual remark from a friend might appear as a riddle spoken by a stranger. A hallway you walked down in real life might return as a corridor leading to a vast cathedral. That is the magic of the brain's nightlights. They take the raw materials of your daily life and transform them into a theatre where imagination is given full rein. And here lies the gentle paradox. For all our modern instruments, for all the electrodes and scanners that show us which parts of the brain glow at which times, we still cannot say with certainty why the performance takes place at all. The lights blaze, the actors speak, the emotions swell, and yet the purpose remains partly hidden, like a lantern glimpsed through fog. Some scientists lean toward randomness, others toward hidden function, and some admit that dreams may serve many roles at once. What matters for us tonight is less the definitive answer than the sense of wonder that the brain, while resting, still stages such a luminous, emotional and intricate performance. It is as though, even when your body is still, some part of you refuses to stop creating stories. Dreams are the proof that imagination does not need waking life to flourish. It has its own stage, its own audience, and its own mysterious reasons for shining. So the next time you wake from a dream that feels impossibly vivid, remember, it was born in this nighttime city of flickering lights, where emotion and imagery burn brightly. Logic drifts into silence, and memory barely holds the thread. You carried the ticket to the show simply by falling asleep, and whether or not you recall the performance in detail, the experience shaped you, softened you, perhaps even guided you in ways you may never entirely understand. By now you can see that the dreaming brain is anything but silent. It hums and flickers with activity. Emotions swirl and whole landscapes are painted behind your eyelids. But the deeper question, the one that keeps slipping out of our hands like a wet stone, is why? Why should the brain bother at all? Why stage these elaborate emotional plays each night when it could simply shut down and rest? For decades, scientists and philosophers have offered answers, each one a small lantern held up in the dark, illuminating a different corner of the mystery. One of the earliest modern explanations is called the activation synthesis hypothesis. Imagine your brainstem at night firing off little electrical sparks, not unlike a faulty string of holiday lights, buzzing and flickering at random. Those sparks shoot upward into the cortex, the thinking and imagining part of your brain, which does not simply ignore them. Instead, it tries to make sense of the static, to weave it into some kind of story. A sudden burst in one area might call up the image of a dog. Another burst might conjure the memory of your school cafeteria. Another might tug at an old fear of missing the bus. And before you know it, the brain has stitched these stray patches into a quilt that becomes your dream. According to this view, dreams are essentially your mind doing its best to narrate nonsense, patching together the scattered fireworks into something resembling a story, however surreal the result. But many researchers feel this cannot be the whole picture, because even if dreams begin with random sparks, the question remains, why do those sparks matter so much? Why do they sometimes leave you waking in tears or with a sudden idea? This leads us to the memory consolidation theory, which paints dreams not as static to be endured, but as a kind of night shift at the archive. Throughout the day, your brain collects experiences, faces glimpsed on the subway, facts half-studied for an exam, the taste of an unfamiliar spice, and all of these are piled high on the desk of the hippocampus. When you sleep, particularly in REM, the brain begins sorting. Some memories are filed carefully into long-term storage, others are tossed into the mental recycling bin, and still others are combined into broader categories, filed not as isolated details but as meaningful patterns. In this gentle filing process, fragments naturally mingle, creating the strange stories we call dreams. A classmate from 10 years ago may sit across from you at a dinner table that looks suspiciously like your office, because in the brain's archive the labels are being reorganized. And then there is the emotional regulation theory, which sees dreams as a kind of nighttime therapy session. During REM, your brain's emotional centers light up, but the chemicals that trigger stress and panic are dampened. It is as though the brain invites your fears and sorrows back on stage, but this time in softer lighting, with the harsh spotlights turned low. That argument you had earlier in the week might replay in a dream, but in a stranger setting, perhaps on top of a slow-moving train, or in a room that dissolves into water, because your mind is trying to rehearse the feelings without overwhelming you. By morning, you may not consciously remember the dream, but your emotional landscape has shifted, smoothed just a little. Some researchers believe this is one reason people deprived of REM sleep become irritable and anxious. Without that nightly therapy, feelings stack up like unwashed dishes. Another theory, often called threat simulation, reaches further back into our evolutionary past. Picture a hunter-gatherer child sleeping in a cave thousands of years ago. In her dreams, she finds herself chased by a predator, heart pounding, lungs burning. Though it is only a dream, the rehearsal trains her brain and body to respond swiftly to danger in waking life. In this view, dreams are like fire drills staged by the mind, exaggerated, sometimes terrifying, but ultimately a way to keep survival skills sharp. Even today, many of the dreams we call nightmares revolve around being chased, attacked, or trapped. They may not be pleasant, but they could be echoes of this ancient rehearsal hall. What is striking is that none of these theories excludes the others. Dreams may be random sparks that the brain stitches into stories. They may be filing sessions for memory, emotional rehearsals for the heart, or safety drills for the body. They might be all of these at once, layered like sheets of music in a symphony. Perhaps this explains why dreams resist simple definition. They're multitaskers, performing many functions under the cover of night. And yet, for all the science, we must remember how personal the experience feels. When you wake from a dream of losing someone you love, it does not feel like random sparks or evolutionary drills. It feels like grief, like longing, like something that matters. When you dream of solving a puzzle that had stumped you, or when an artist dreams a melody that later becomes a song, it feels like creativity at work, not noise. Science can show us the electrical currents, but your own heart reminds you that dreams are more than circuitry. So perhaps the best way to think of these scientific explanations is not as competing truths, but as different lenses. Through one, dreams are sparks in the dark. Through another, they are the careful hands of a librarian. Through another, they are a therapist's gentle rehearsal. Through another, they are the echo of ancient survival drills. Each lens reveals something useful, and none captures the entire mystery. The brain at night is a busy workshop, a theatre and archive, a rehearsal hall and a playground all at once. And here, as you lie in your own bed, perhaps already drifting a little, you can imagine those sparks of the brain flickering like stars across a night sky. Some fall together into constellations, some vanish before you notice them, and some shine brightly enough to guide you into the morning. Whether you call them random, useful, or profound, they are part of you, part of the nightly rhythm that makes being human a little more mysterious and a little more wondrous. If you ask anyone about their dreams, even someone who swears they never remember them, chances are they can describe at least one that has haunted or amused them for years. Maybe it was the sudden sensation of falling endlessly through the air, heart lurching even as the body remains safe in bed. Maybe it was the impossible lightness of flying, arms stretched like wings while rooftops passed beneath as easily as stepping stones in a shallow stream. Or perhaps it was one of the most universal dream scripts of all, standing in a classroom late for an exam, realizing you never studied, never even knew the class existed, and somehow everyone is staring at you as if they already know. These are the everyday enigmas of dreaming, familiar to people across cultures and centuries, as though the human mind has a shared list of scenes it likes to replay in the theatre of the night. The dream of falling is perhaps the most basic. It may begin with a stumble on a staircase, or a step off a curb, and then it stretches into a boundless plunge, with nothing to catch you and no end in sight. Some scientists suggest this may be the brain misinterpreting sudden muscle twitches as the body relaxes into sleep. Others think it could be a distant evolutionary echo, a rehearsal of the ancient danger of losing your footing in the dark. But to you, lying there in the middle of the night, none of that matters. The sensation is so immediate, so visceral, that your stomach drops as if gravity itself has remembered you with cruel precision. And then, just as suddenly you wake, heart pounding, the sheets tangled around your legs, wondering if the fall was warning or illusion. Flying dreams are the opposite, the airy cousins to falling nightmares. These dreams often feel exhilarating rather than frightening. They rarely make sense. You may launch from a field with nothing more than a leap, or find yourself gliding down a crowded street ignored by pedestrians who don't seem to notice your impossible flight. Yet the feeling is unmistakable. Liberation, joy, a temporary suspension of all, the rules that hold you down in waking life. Psychologists sometimes suggest these dreams reflect the desire for freedom or the relief of escaping pressure. Neuroscientists, a little more grounded, simply note that the vestibular system in your inner ear, which monitors balance and motion, may fire erratically during REM, conjuring the illusion of soaring. But no explanation diminishes the sweetness of the experience. When you wake from a flying dream, you may even carry a trace of that weightless confidence into your morning, as though the air itself feels a little friendlier. And then, of course, there are the school dreams, the dreaded exams, the missing homework, the sudden realization that you cannot find your classroom in a building you have walked 1,000 times before. It doesn't matter if you graduated years ago, or if your school days were relatively uneventful. These dreams return like unwelcome sequels to a story you thought was finished. They usually arrive when you are stressed in waking life, when deadlines pile up or responsibilities weigh heavy. The dream does not hand you the exact problem you face in reality, your taxes, your inbox, your complicated project at work, but instead dresses stress in the familiar uniform of school, where the fear of being unprepared was once so sharp. In a sense, these dreams are the brain's shorthand. It knows how to make you feel that old pressure instantly, so it reaches for the setting that will deliver the lesson. Of course, dreams are not always serious rehearsals of fear or longing. Sometimes they are delightfully absurd, stitched together from the most unlikely ingredients. Perhaps you ate pizza late at night and now you dream of an endless kitchen, where slices float past like satellites. Perhaps a television show lingers in your mind and reappears, slightly altered, in a dream where you're suddenly part of the cast. Maybe the cat curled at your feet makes its way into your dream as a talking companion who offers advice in a language you somehow understand. These mashups can feel chaotic, but they often mirror the way the brain combines fragments of memory, sensation, and imagination into something that refuses to follow logic, but still feels oddly coherent in the moment. The question, then, is whether these common motifs, falling, flying, exams, absurd mashups, are truly random, or whether there is some hidden order. The activation synthesis theory would say they are noise, the brain's attempt to narrate sparks without meaning. But the continuity hypothesis, which suggests our dreams are shaped by our daily lives and emotional states, would argue that these recurring patterns are not accidents. They are the brain's way of packaging experiences, fears, and longings into recognizable scripts. Falling may echo anxiety, flying may echo freedom, exams may echo responsibility, and pizza chaos may simply be the midnight snack echoing in your belly. What makes them feel mysterious is not just their content, but the way they cut across boundaries. A student in Tokyo, a retiree in London, a farmer in Kenya, all may report the same dream of showing up late to an exam. That universality suggests something deeper than chance, though whether it is rooted in shared biology, shared psychology, or shared culture is difficult to say. What you can know, as you lie in your own bed, is that you are never entirely alone in your dreaming. Somewhere else, someone is tumbling through the air or stretching wings they do not have, or rifling through a backpack that contains no answers. So the next time you find yourself waking from one of these familiar dreams, whether it leaves you laughing, sighing, or clutching your chest, take a moment to smile at the strange consistency of it all. Your private theatre has staged a scene performed countless times before, across cultures and centuries, by minds as varied as snowflakes, yet as connected as stars in a constellation. Whether random sparks or subtle patterns, these common dream motifs remind us that beneath all our differences, the landscape of the sleeping mind has shared landmarks, mountains, and rivers we travel together without ever meeting. It is one of the strangest things about dreams. While you're inside them, they feel vivid and undeniable, every detail sharp, every emotion real. Yet within minutes of waking, they begin to dissolve. A story that seemed as long and complicated as a novel is reduced to a single image, perhaps a doorway or a face, or the sensation of running without moving. Sometimes even that fragment vanishes before you have finished brushing your teeth, leaving behind nothing but the faint impression that something happened. Dreams slip through your fingers so easily that it is tempting to believe they were never really there at all. Scientists have long puzzled over this forgetfulness, and the clues lie in the way the brain handles memory during sleep. In waking life, a structure called the hippocampus acts like an attentive archivist, cataloguing experiences and placing them carefully into long-term storage. Without it, your days would blur together, and new events would be lost as quickly as they arrived. But in REM sleep, the hippocampus rests. It is still present, but its activity diminishes, like a librarian who has dimmed the lights and closed the index drawers. The result is that the vivid experiences of your dreams are rarely stamped with the durable ink of long-term memory. They flare brightly in the moment, but fade as quickly as chalk in the rain. A useful metaphor is to imagine carrying water in your hands. While your fingers are cupped, the liquid feels solid, cool, and real. You can look at it, even play with its shape. But try to carry it very far, and it will inevitably leak through the gaps until nothing remains but a damp trace on your palms. Dreams are like that, full and convincing while you're holding them, but impossible to keep without some kind of vessel, like a journal or deliberate recall practice to catch them before they slip away. This explains the everyday frustration of waking with a dream still fresh, determined to remember it, only to find it evaporating by the time you make coffee. You might cling to one last scene, sitting in a crowded train talking to a friend you haven't seen in years, yet when you reach for the details, the background blurs, the dialogue is lost, and eventually you're left only with the faint mood of it. Was it happy? Was it sad? You're not sure, but the feeling lingers like perfume after the person has left the room. Of course, not all dreams are so easily forgotten. Some cling with remarkable strength, replaying in memory for years, even decades. These are often dreams charged with strong emotion, nightmares of loss or danger, or luminous dreams of joy and discovery. Emotion seems to act as a kind of glue, binding the dream more firmly into memory. Scientists have observed that the amygdala, which handles emotional processing, is especially active during REM sleep, and its activity may be the reason certain dreams leave deeper imprints. A child's recurring nightmare of being chased, or an artist's dream of a striking image, may linger not because the hippocampus did its job, but because the emotional charge was simply too strong to fade away completely. Cultural traditions have long recognized this unevenness. Ancient peoples often distinguish between ordinary dreams that slipped away with the dawn and big dreams that felt unforgettable, heavy with meaning. The Greeks believed the gods sometimes sent particularly powerful dreams that stayed vivid as a sign they deserved attention. Jung, centuries later, echoed this idea when he spoke of archetypal dreams, which felt larger than life and seemed to belong not just to the individual but to humanity itself. Whether through divine intention or psychological depth, the fact remains that some dreams refuse to be forgotten, anchoring themselves in the mind against all odds. But for most of us, most of the time, dreams vanish quietly. And perhaps that is not a flaw but a feature. Imagine if you remembered every dream in perfect detail. You would carry hundreds of bizarre, disjointed stories with you, piling up each morning until you could barely tell your waking life apart from your sleeping adventures. The forgetfulness may be protective, allowing you to wake into clarity rather than confusion. It lets dreams perform their work, emotional processing, memory sorting, imaginative rehearsal, without demanding that you carry the entire script with you afterward. In a way, dreams are like actors who perform each night without asking for reviews, content to vanish as the curtain falls. Still, many people find joy in catching them before they disappear. Keeping a notebook by the bed, whispering the dream aloud before rising, or even sketching an image can turn those leaky handfuls of water into something lasting. People who practice dream recall often find that their ability improves with time, as though the brain learns that dreams matter and begins to hold on to them more tightly. Even then, not every dream will stay, but those that do often feel more personal, more connected to the rhythm of your life. So the next time you wake with a dream half remembered, do not be too disappointed if it fades. Instead, consider it part of the natural rhythm of the mind, the way clouds drift and dissolve in the sky. Some will pass without leaving a trace, some will linger in memory like constellations, and a few will glow so brightly that they light your path long after the night has ended. Forgetting is not failure. It is simply the way the brain balances the worlds it carries, keeping the waking one clear while letting the dreaming one drift into mystery. And perhaps that is part of the beauty. Dreams are not meant to be fully grasped. They are whispers, mist, fragile sketches drawn in sand before the tide returns. To live with them is to accept their fleeting nature, to savour them while they last, and to trust that even when forgotten, they have already touched you in ways you may never fully know. If you look closely at the dreams you do remember, you may notice a curious pattern. The characters, the settings, even the smallest props often come straight from your daily life. It may not be obvious at first. Sometimes a person you saw only in passing reappears as a central figure, or the hallway you walked through on your way to work returns as the backdrop for a bizarre adventure. But again and again, the material of dreams seems recycled from the hours you were awake. This observation forms the heart of what scientists call the continuity hypothesis, the idea that your waking experiences are not left behind at bedtime but instead continue, transformed into the stories of sleep. Consider the simple act of binge-watching a television show. You may spend an evening absorbed in fictional plots, surrounded by characters who feel real only on the screen. Then, hours later, when you finally drift into sleep, those characters may reappear, no longer bound to their scripted world, but mingling with the people you actually know. Your favourite detective might help you find your lost keys in the kitchen, or a villain might show up at your family dinner, and everyone acts as though this is perfectly normal. The brain, having been saturated with those images and voices, carries them into the night and sets them spinning in new combinations. The same is true for the more subtle fragments of your day. An offhand argument with a friend left unresolved might echo back as a dream where you are searching desperately for something you cannot find. The frustration of the day is translated into a different form, but the feeling remains. Even the smallest joys slip in. A moment of laughter, the warmth of holding a cup of tea, the sight of a bird outside your window. These too may return, disguised yet familiar, part of the raw material your brain reuses in its nightly recycling project. It helps to think of the mind as a kind of compost heap. All the scraps of your waking life, the rich, the trivial, the sharp, the sweet, are tossed in together, and during the night they break down, mingle and ferment. By morning the details may be unrecognizable, but the mixture has enriched the soil of your memory and emotion. Dreams are the visible byproducts of that process, the strange mushrooms that sprout unexpectedly on the heap, shaped by what you fed into it the day before. This recycling is not perfect, nor is it predictable. Some experiences enter dreams immediately, while others may not show up until days later, or not at all. Scientists call this the dream lag effect, the curious tendency for certain events to appear in dreams about a week after they happened, as though the brain holds on to them, waiting for the right moment to reweave them into the nightly narrative. Imagine arguing with a colleague on Monday, thinking the matter settled by Tuesday, only to dream the following weekend of being lost in a vast building with endless doors that refuse to open. The details differ, but the unresolved tension finds its way back, given form by the dream stage. There is also evidence that this recycling serves practical purposes. Students who spend hours studying often dream of the material they have been trying to learn. A pianist practicing a difficult piece may later dream of playing it, the notes stumbling and repeating, as if the brain is rehearsing even while the body rests. Athletes sometimes report dreaming of their movements, replaying games or routines, and waking with a sense that practice continued through the night. These are not merely random mashups, but subtle rehearsals, the mind's way of continuing its work in a softer, less structured environment. But dreams do not simply replay the day in literal form. They twist, exaggerate, and transform. The show you watch becomes a surreal mashup with your childhood memories. The argument becomes a maze. The cup of tea becomes an ocean. In these transformations lies the artistry of the brain. It does not just recycle, it remixes. And in that remixing, it may help you process what mattered most. This is why dreams often feel like unfinished conversations. They take what has been left unresolved, what still carries emotional weight, and they bring it back, sometimes again and again, until it is softened or understood. A recurring dream may simply be the brain knocking politely at your door saying, "There is still something here for you to notice." Whether or not you consciously recognize the connection, the nightly recycling continues, shaping your inner landscape just as surely as your waking choices do. For you, the dreamer, it can be comforting to know that nothing is wasted. The moments of your day, no matter how small, find their way into the tapestry of your nights. Even if you forget the details by morning, the process has already touched you, smoothing rough edges, strengthening fragile threads, reminding you in its own quiet way that life is continuous, not divided into neat compartments of day and night. The recycling happens whether you notice it or not, and that means every dream, whether forgotten, remembered, or half glimpsed, has already done its work. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, you may find yourself back in a familiar street, or sitting with a long-lost friend, or caught in a scene that makes no sense at all. Wherever you go, you can be certain that the dream has roots in the soil of your own life, watered by the emotions, sights, and sounds of your waking hours. It is not chaos, not entirely. It is the quiet continuation of who you are, carrying on even as your body rests, reminding you that the mind never truly stops weaving. When you think of dreams, you might picture them as the most personal of experiences, stitched from your private thoughts and memories, carried out behind closed eyelids where no one else can enter. And yet, across cultures, across centuries, people have noticed that certain dream images keep returning, not just to one sleeper but to many, as though the human mind carries a common library of symbols that it draws upon again and again. A serpent winding its way through a field, a sudden flood sweeping through a village, the shadow of a stranger watching from the corner of a room. These motifs appear in dreams from ancient myths to modern accounts, shared by people who never met and never read the same books. It is as if our dreams are not completely private after all, but plugged into something wider, a tapestry woven from threads that belong to us all. The psychologist Carl Jung gave this idea a name, the collective unconscious. He believed that beneath each person's unique experiences and personal unconscious lay a deeper stratum, filled with archetypes, universal figures and patterns that shape the way humanity imagines itself. In dreams, these archetypes surface as images that feel larger than life, weighted with meaning. The wise old man who appears to guide you through a forest, the endless staircase that stretches into the sky, the flood that sweeps away everything familiar. Jung would say these are not simply fragments of your day, but echoes of something all humans carry within them. They are symbols drawn from a shared reservoir of story and myth, bubbling up in the quiet of the night. Take water, for example. Across cultures, dreams of water often carry emotional significance. Some describe being submerged in endless oceans, others standing by rivers or watching storms. Water appears as both threat and renewal, waves that drown, streams that cleanse. Even without reading each other's myths, people across continents dream of water in similar ways. Jung might argue that water represents the unconscious itself, a vast and shifting element, and when it floods your dreams, it may be a sign that your deeper feelings are rising to the surface. Or consider houses. People often dream of walking through homes, sometimes their own, sometimes unfamiliar ones with endless corridors or locked rooms. Psychologists have noticed that these house dreams often reflect the dreamer's sense of self. The familiar rooms are the aspects of life you know, while the locked or hidden chambers may symbolize untapped parts of your psyche. But what is striking is how often the imagery repeats across people, cultures, and time. A stranger in Brazil and another in Finland may both describe dreams of discovering a hidden room in a house they thought they knew. These repeating images suggest that dreams speak a language that transcends borders. And then there are serpents. Ancient civilizations filled their myths with snake dreams. Mesopotamians, Egyptians, Greeks all recorded visions of serpents. Modern dreamers too often report snake encounters, sometimes frightening, sometimes protective. The symbol of the serpent carries many layers: danger, wisdom, transformation, rebirth. A snake sheds its skin after all becoming new, and perhaps that is why this image recurs so often. Even if you have never studied mythology, the presence of a serpent in a dream can feel heavy with meaning, as though you have stepped into a story older than yourself. Skeptics might say that the recurrence of these symbols is not proof of any deeper connection, but simply a reflection of the shared human condition. We all fear water, we all live in houses, we all encounter snakes, so naturally these appear in our dreams. Yet even if that explanation is true, there is still something remarkable about the way the dream mind transforms these ordinary realities into symbolic forms. A cup of water rarely appears in a dream as just a cup. It swells into a flood or becomes a river stretching beyond sight. A simple hallway expands into a labyrinth. A garden snake becomes a mythic creature, coiled and watchful. Dreams take the shared details of human life and turn them into grand archetypes, speaking in a language that is both personal and collective. When you hear stories of such dreams, you may feel a sense of recognition, even if you have never dreamed that exact image yourself. Perhaps someone describes being lost in a forest, and you nod, remembering a similar dream of wandering through unfamiliar trees. or they speak of being chased by a shadow, and you feel a shiver, recalling your own night of running from something unseen. These resonances are gentle reminders that the theatre of dreams, though performed privately, often stages plays that echo across humanity. So when you dream of a flood, or a serpent, or a house with hidden rooms, you might pause to consider that you are stepping into an image countless others have seen before you. You're not alone in that theatre. Somewhere in another time, another place, someone else has walked through the same waters, climbed the same staircase, faced the same shadow. And whether that connection is explained by psychology, biology, or some deeper collective story, the fact remains. Your dreams, while uniquely yours, are also part of a larger human chorus. In this way, dreams remind us that we're connected not just by waking experience, but by sleeping imagination. We share symbols without ever speaking them aloud, and in doing so, we discover that the enigma of dreaming is not confined to individual minds. It ripples outward, connecting us to each other, whispering through archetypes that travel across cultures, across centuries, across the mysterious architecture of the sleeping brain. If universal symbols hint at a deeper layer of connection among dreamers, then the stories of shared dreams take that suggestion one step further, into territory that feels both enchanting and unsettling. Every so often, you hear accounts of two or more people dreaming similar scenes at the same time, or of one person entering a dream and finding another already there. These tales do not arrive neatly packaged with scientific explanations, but they persist in folklore, in anecdotes, and even in the careful notes of a few researchers who dared to examine them. Whether coincidence or something stranger, the phenomenon of shared dreams invites us to wonder whether the dream theatre is entirely private, or if, on rare occasions, its walls grow thin enough to let others inside. One of the most common forms of shared dreams occurs within families. Parents sometimes report dreaming of their children in distress, waking to discover that the child has indeed been ill or restless in another room. Siblings describe dreaming the same landscape, an endless beach, a storm-lashed house, and only later, over breakfast, realizing their nights were uncannily aligned. Couples who live together sometimes tell of drifting into parallel narratives, as if their closeness in waking life seeped into their sleeping minds, guiding both towards similar stories. These moments can be brushed aside as chance, but for the people who experience them, they carry a weight difficult to dismiss. Anthropologists have noted that many traditional cultures take shared dreaming seriously. In some indigenous communities, dream circles are part of communal life. People gather in the morning to share their dreams, and patterns are noticed, symbols or events appearing in multiple dreamers on the same night. For those cultures, such overlaps are not accidents, but signs that the community is attuned to the same spiritual rhythms. A dream of a hunt shared by several hunters might be taken as guidance. A dream of a flood, seen by multiple villagers, might be heeded as warning. In these contexts, dreams are not just personal reflections, but communal messages, and shared dreams are evidence of a deeper collective bond. In the modern era, researchers have occasionally tried to test the possibility of dream synchronicity. Experiments in the 1970s attempted to see whether a person concentrating on an image could somehow influence another person's dream in a sleep lab. The results were suggestive but not conclusive. Some dreamers did report images close to those the sender was focusing on, but not with the consistency that science demands. Skeptics point to coincidence and the human tendency to find patterns even in randomness. Supporters wonder if the experiments were glimpses of something our tools are not yet subtle enough to measure. Then there are the more intimate anecdotes, the ones whispered between friends or partners. A woman dreams of walking through a garden and meeting a stranger. In the morning, her friend describes the same garden, the same figure. Two people who have been apart for months both dream of reuniting on the same night, in the same imagined place, and wake with the same bitter-sweet longing. These stories are not easily verified, yet they are told with sincerity, The dreamer is convinced that something unusual passed between them. Of course, science remains cautious. The prevailing view is that dreams are influenced by shared experiences and emotions rather than mysterious transmissions. If two people live together, face the same stresses, or even discuss similar topics before bed, their dreams may echo one another naturally. Our minds are shaped by context, and context is often shared. Add to this the fact that dreams are fragmentary and malleable when recalled, and you have fertile ground for apparent synchronicities. What begins as two slightly different dreams may, in the telling, align into a single shared story. Memory is not a faithful recorder. It is a flexible storyteller. And yet, there is something enchanting in the possibility that the walls of dreaming are not completely solid. Even if coincidence explains most accounts, the idea that your dream might brush against someone else's, that your sleeping mind might wander into a corridor where another is already walking, carries a quiet beauty. It suggests that connection is deeper than conversation, deeper than waking life, that perhaps the very act of being close to someone creates subtle harmonies that echo into sleep. Whether these harmonies are metaphors or mysteries, the stories continue to circulate. They remind us that dreaming is not only a private act, but also part of the wider human fabric. You may never share a dream exactly, but knowing that others have felt the uncanny overlap can change the way you think about your own. The next time you wake from a vivid dream and someone else says, "That's strange, I dreamed something like that too," you may feel a shiver of recognition, as though the dream world had briefly widened to let two minds step inside together. So let us not dismiss these tales too quickly. Science may be cautious, but wonder is patient. Shared dreams may be rare, or they may be more common than we realise, slipping past our attention because we seldom compare notes. Either way, they serve as gentle reminders. Even in the most private corners of your mind, you may not be entirely alone. There are dreams that fade within moments of waking, slipping away like smoke in the morning light, and then there are the rare dreams that linger, etched so deeply into memory that they feel almost like messages. Throughout history, people have reported dreams that seem to reveal truths, offer guidance, or even foreshadow events that had not yet unfolded. Whether these dreams are coincidences, products of intuition, or glimpses of something beyond our ordinary awareness, they occupy a special place in the long story of human wonder. They are the dreams that seem to know. One of the most haunting examples comes from American history. In 1865, just days before his assassination, President Abraham Lincoln described a vivid dream to friends and family. He told of walking through the White House, hearing the sound of mourning. He entered the East Room, where a coffin lay surrounded by soldiers and grieving people. When he asked who had died, a soldier answered, "The President." Soon after, Lincoln was killed at Ford's Theatre. For those who heard his account, the dream seemed like an eerie premonition, a warning of fate he could not escape. Historians may debate whether memory embellished the tale after the tragedy, but the power of the story endures, a reminder of how dreams can carry the weight of prophecy. Not all such dreams are ominous. Some lead to discovery and creativity. The chemist Auguste Kekulé famously recounted a dream in which he saw a snake biting its own tail, forming a ring. This image, drawn from myth as much as from science, gave him the insight that the structure of the benzene molecule was circular, a revelation that transformed organic chemistry. A dream image became the spark of scientific progress. Similarly, Dmitry Mendeleev, the Russian scientist who created the periodic table, said he had struggled for days to organize the known elements until, exhausted, he fell asleep and dreamed of them falling into place in a clear arrangement. When he awoke, he quickly wrote down what he had seen, giving birth to the table that every chemistry student studies today. Artists, too, have often credited dreams with inspiration. Paul McCartney dreamed the melody of Yesterday, waking to find the tune so fully formed in his mind that he assumed it must already exist. The surrealist painter Salvador Dali used to nap with a key in his hand, letting it fall and wake him just as he began to dream, capturing the strange imagery that floated between waking and sleep. In these cases, the dream does not reveal the future, but rather unlocks the creativity of the present, bypassing the rational filters that often restrain imagination. Of course, skeptics remind us that for every story of a dream that came true, countless dreams do not. People dream of disasters that never happen, of reunions that never come, of triumphs that dissolve by morning. Memory is selective. We remember the dreams that align with real events, and we forget the ones that don't. Yet even acknowledging this, the stories remain powerful because they capture a sense that dreams may tap into layers of the mind we do not usually access. Layers that notice patterns, gather fragments of intuition, and weave them into narratives that sometimes feel prophetic. Take, for instance, the everyday phenomenon of solving a problem in a dream. A writer stuck on a story may wake with the solution. A student wrestling with a puzzle may dream of the answer. These moments may not be mystical, but they remind us that the brain continues working while we sleep, reshuffling ideas until clarity appears. What feels like foresight may sometimes be the fruit of unconscious processing, surfacing in a dream when the mind is free from distraction. And yet, there remains a category of dreams that defies easy explanation. The dreams that align too closely with reality, the coincidences that seem too sharp to dismiss. A mother dreaming of an accident moments before receiving news. A scientist glimpsing the structure of a molecule that later proves correct. A leader foreseeing their own death. Science cannot confirm these as evidence of prophecy, but neither can it erase the deep impression they leave on those who dream them. Perhaps it is best to hold these dreams with gentle hands, neither clutching them too tightly nor dismissing them outright. They remind us that the boundary between waking knowledge and sleeping imagination is more porous than we assume. Whether through intuition, coincidence, or some deeper mystery, dreams sometimes carry a wisdom that feels greater than chance. So the next time you wake from a dream that feels unusually vivid, unusually heavy with meaning, consider pausing before brushing it aside. Write it down, sit with it, let it breathe. Maybe it's only the echo of yesterday's worries, stitched into a new form. Or maybe it's something more, a hint, a gift, a spark waiting to guide you. Whether you treat it as prophecy, inspiration, or simply mystery, the important thing is to notice, because in the quiet hours of the night, when the brain lights its hidden theatre, there are moments when the curtain seems to lift just a little higher, offering a glimpse of something you cannot quite explain but cannot ignore. When you slip into sleep and the curtains of dreaming rise, it can sometimes feel as though you have stepped into an entirely different reality. The streets are paved with rules that never existed before, the people you meet behave in ways you could not predict, and even the sky seems painted in colours that feel both familiar and strange. Waking life insists that these scenes are inventions, stitched from memory and imagination, but it is difficult to shake the sensation that you have truly been somewhere, that you have visited a world with its own texture, its own logic, its own atmosphere of reality. This is where the mind wanders into the possibility of parallel universes. What if dreams are not merely internal productions, but brief glimpses into other versions of existence? Science does not confirm this, of course, but the thought itself is enchanting. You might imagine the multiverse not as a chaotic explosion of infinite worlds, but as a row of quiet rooms, each with its own scenery, and when you dream, a door opens and for a few hours you step inside. You explore its hallways, interact with its inhabitants, and when you wake, the door closes again, leaving you with fragments of memory as souvenirs. A simple way to picture this is to think of your mind as a computer browser. During the day, you have one main tab open, the waking world. You scroll through it, focus on its details, and treat it as the only tab that matters. But at night, as you drift into REM sleep, other tabs begin to open. Some show versions of your life slightly altered, a conversation that went differently, a choice you did not make. Others display landscapes that could never exist in your waking world, vast floating cities, deserts under green skies, oceans where gravity behaves like a playful trickster. Each dream is a tab, open for a short while, running its own page of reality until morning comes and the browser collapses back to one. It is important to say that science does not offer proof that dreams are portals into alternate universes. Neuroscientists describe them in terms of neural activity, memory processing, and emotional regulation. Yet philosophy reminds us that our experience is not only about what can be measured. The vividness of a dream, the way it convinces you completely while you're inside it, is itself a kind of reality, however fleeting. If your senses tell you that you're standing on a mountaintop or flying over a city, then in that moment, in that state of consciousness, you truly are. To call it unreal simply because it dissolves with waking is to overlook the fact that all experiences, waking or dreaming, live only in perception and memory. Some thinkers have gone further, suggesting that dreams might be parallel trials of possibility. Imagine your life as a great tree, with branches extending in every direction. Choices made, choices unmade, paths followed, paths abandoned. Perhaps in dreams you wander along those other branches, not permanently, not with full consequence, but just long enough to glimpse what might have been. You wake not with certainty, but with a faint awareness that life is larger than the narrow path you walk each day. Even if that vision is metaphorical, it still offers a kind of expansion, reminding you that your mind can imagine infinite versions of yourself. Everyday life provides small echoes of this idea. Think of a moment when you almost made a different choice, turning down one street instead of another, speaking up instead of staying silent. You may wonder, even briefly, what would have happened if you had taken the other road. Dreams sometimes hand you those answers in strange, symbolic ways. You see yourself living in another city, or pursuing another career, or walking with someone who is never more than a fleeting possibility. They may not be literal parallel worlds, but they are imagined worlds, and the imagination has always been humanity's first window into the infinite. The comforting thing is that whether these dream worlds are purely inner constructs or windows onto something beyond, the effect on you is the same. They remind you that life is not a closed box. They open you to flexibility, to creativity, to the possibility that things could be otherwise. A child who dreams of flying wakes with a lighter heart. An adult who dreams of reconciling with an estranged friend may carry that softened feeling into waking life. A person who dreams of a city that does not exist may wake inspired to paint, to write, to build. In each case, the dream world expands the waking one, gifting you with possibilities you may not have considered otherwise. So perhaps it is best not to ask too firmly whether dreams really are portals into alternate universes. Perhaps the gentler question is, what do they make possible for you? If stepping into a dream world makes you see your waking life with more creativity, more compassion, or more wonder, then in a way it has already served as a portal, one that does not need to be literal to be transformative. As you prepare for sleep tonight, you might imagine your mind as that browser, ready to open a handful of mysterious tabs. Some will be familiar, some strange, some fleeting, some sticky with memory. You will wander through them without a map, and in the morning you may carry back only a few lines, a few images, a few feelings. And yet, those fragments are enough. They remind you that even in the privacy of your own mind, you are a traveller, moving through worlds within worlds, guided by the quiet hand of dreaming. There are certain dreams that do not feel like ordinary dreams at all. Instead of wandering through a story or witnessing a series of shifting images, you may suddenly find yourself lifting up, as though your body has remained behind while some lighter version of you drifts free. You might see the room where you're sleeping, the outline of your own resting body, or you might float straight through the walls and into landscapes that shimmer with impossible light. People across centuries and cultures have described these experiences with astonishing similarity, often calling them journeys of the soul, flights of the spirit, or visits to an astral plane. In ancient traditions, the idea of leaving the body during sleep was not considered strange but natural. Egyptian texts spoke of the Ka, a spiritual double that could travel during the night and return at dawn. In Hindu philosophy, the subtle body was thought to wander in dreams, exploring higher planes of existence. Indigenous communities too often saw dream journeys as real voyages, where shamans might meet guides, ancestors, or animal spirits who offered wisdom and healing. In these cultural contexts, what we call out-of-body experiences were not illusions to be dismissed but vital encounters, carrying meaning for the dreamer and the community alike. Modern dreamers often report similar sensations: the sudden awareness of rising out of bed, the feeling of floating, the strange mix of wonder and fear that comes with drifting beyond the boundaries of the body. All of these appear again and again in personal accounts. Some describe flying with ease, soaring over cities or across oceans. Others recall visiting luminous landscapes that feel more vivid than waking life, filled with colours they cannot name. A few even tell of meeting figures who seem to radiate familiarity, though they cannot say who they were. Whether symbolic or literal, these experiences leave a mark, often remembered more vividly than ordinary dreams. From a scientific point of view, there are ways to understand these sensations. During REM sleep, the body is held in a state of atonia, meaning the muscles are temporarily paralysed. This protects you from acting out your dreams, keeping you safe even when the mind is running wild. Sometimes, however, awareness slips in while the body remains still. This can create the eerie feeling of separation. The mind feels awake, the body unresponsive, and the sensation of floating or leaving the body emerges. Neurologists suggest that disturbances in the brain's vestibular system, which manages balance and spatial orientation, may also contribute, creating the sense of drifting or flight. To the scientist, these are not souls departing, but perceptions misfiring. And yet, the fact remains that these experiences feel profound. Even if explained by brain states, the emotional impact is undeniable. A dreamer who feels they have flown across the stars often wakes with awe. Someone who believes they met a long-lost loved one in a dream journey may carry comfort into their waking grief. Whether symbolic or literal, whether a trick of neurons or a glimpse of another plane, the result is the same. The dream expands the dreamer's sense of self and of reality. Perhaps it is best to think of these astral journeys as a kind of theatre that blends the inner and outer, the physical and the symbolic. Your brain is the stage, your body the still audience, and your awareness the actor suddenly aware of both roles. You may walk out of that theatre convinced you have glimpsed another world, or you may leave with the conviction that the brain alone crafted the experience. Either way, you have carried something unusual with you, a story that glows brighter than most. Everyday life even contains small reflections of this phenomenon. When you lose yourself completely in a piece of music, feeling as though you are lifted out of yourself, or when you watch a sunset so breathtaking it seems to dissolve your boundaries, you're experiencing something similar, a loosening of the sense of self, a soft expansion beyond the body. Dreams simply magnify this, offering an immersive simulation of leaving the body behind. So, whether you prefer the language of ancient traditions, the soul wandering, the subtle body flying, or the language of modern science, the REM paralysis, the vestibular disorientation, the gentle truth remains the same. These experiences remind us that consciousness is flexible, not fixed. It can expand and contract, lift and drift, dissolve and return. Dreams grant us the gift of exploring that flexibility without danger, giving us stories of flight and freedom that we may carry long after waking. The next time you dream of rising above your bed, of floating through ceilings, of flying across impossible skies, consider holding the experience lightly. You need not decide whether it was real in the sense of external travel or real in the sense of internal vision. What matters is that it felt real to you, that it gave you the sensation of stepping outside ordinary boundaries, and in that moment, whether in this world or another, you tasted freedom. When you think of consciousness, you might imagine it as something bound to the body, tethered firmly to the brain inside your skull. It feels local, contained, as if your sense of self cannot exist without that familiar biological home. Yet dreams, with their ability to carry you into places that do not exist, to let you meet versions of people who are no longer alive, or to let you speak with strangers you have never met, raise a quiet question. What if awareness is not entirely local? What if the mind, at least in some states, extends beyond its physical frame? Philosophers have long speculated on this. Some argue that consciousness is an emergent property of the brain, nothing more than the sum of neurons firing in intricate patterns. Others suggest it might be more fundamental, woven into the very fabric of reality, like space and time themselves. Dreams become interesting test cases in this debate because they show consciousness behaving differently than we expect. You can be in two places at once, both participant and observer. You can interact with characters who seem to know more than you do. You can wake with insights you did not have the day before. These are not proofs of non-local awareness, but they are gentle provocations, hints that the boundaries may not be as clear as we once thought. Consider the experience of meeting someone in a dream who feels entirely real, whose words surprise you, whose actions you could not have predicted. If dreams are only recycled fragments of memory, how is it that these figures can behave in ways that seem independent, as though they carry minds of their own? One explanation is that your brain is clever enough to generate dialogue without your conscious control, creating the illusion of autonomy. Another is that your dreaming mind may be tapping into deeper patterns of imagination, or perhaps even into currents of awareness that extend beyond yourself. Science leans toward the first explanation, yet the mystery of the second lingers, not because we can prove it, but because we feel it. There are moments when dreams seem to reach outside of ordinary boundaries, a dream that mirrors an event you had no way of knowing, a dream that gifts you with knowledge or creativity beyond what you expected, a dream that reunites you with someone you have lost, offering comfort that lingers long after waking. To call these coincidences may be accurate, but to call them meaningless feels too harsh. They are part of the lived texture of human experience, carrying an emotional reality that is undeniable. Philosophical traditions across cultures have suggested that the mind is not sealed. In Vedanta philosophy, consciousness is described as limitless, with individual minds like waves on an ocean, appearing separate but in truth connected. In certain mystical traditions of the West, dreams were thought of as doorways into the collective soul of humanity. Even in modern physics, where the conversation is more cautious, some scientists speculate that consciousness might not be confined to brains alone, but might interact with the universe in ways we do not yet understand. Dreams, in their strange and expansive ways, keep those questions alive. From a scientific perspective, the safer explanation is that dreams simply demonstrate the brain's ability to simulate reality. The prefrontal cortex steps back, the emotional centers take the lead, and the result is a convincing theatre of imagination. But even here, the philosophical wonder remains. If your brain can generate entire worlds with people, landscapes, and laws of nature, does that not suggest that consciousness has extraordinary scope? Even if it is all in your head, it seems, is vast enough to hold universes. Everyday life offers its own reminders that awareness is more flexible than we think. When you become lost in a book, feeling the presence of characters who are not real, or when you're so absorbed in music that you lose track of time and place. Your consciousness has already stepped beyond its local boundaries. Dreams are simply the most immersive version of this, carrying you fully into worlds that dissolve only when the alarm rings. The gentle question, then, is not whether dreams prove that consciousness is non-local, but whether they allow us to taste what such an expanded awareness might feel like. When you meet yourself in a dream, perhaps younger, older, or living differently, are you not in that moment both yourself and more than yourself? When you walk through landscapes that never existed, are you not stretching your awareness beyond what waking life usually allows? Whether or not dreams connect you to something external, they certainly remind you that the mind is not a narrow hallway but a sprawling, many-windowed house. So as you reflect on the dream self who flies, who converses, who grieves and rejoices, you might ask softly, is that self still you? The body lies in bed, the waking personality rests, yet something continues, vivid and alive. Perhaps dreams are less about proving metaphysical theories, and more about showing you, each night, how vast and flexible your own awareness already is. And if that awareness sometimes feels as though it brushes against realities beyond your own, perhaps it is enough simply to notice, to marvel, and to let the question remain open. For all the mystery that surrounds dreams, their symbolism, their speculation, their possible connections to realms beyond, one of their most undeniable gifts lies in the practical, the quietly useful, the way they seem to solve problems while you sleep. It is a curious thought, isn't it, that while your body lies still and your eyes flicker beneath closed lids, your mind is at work, rearranging puzzles, loosening knots, and sometimes handing you answers you could not reach by effort alone. Dreams have long been companions to creativity, as though the imagination breathes more freely in the darkness, unchained from the routines of the day. Consider the story of Paul McCartney, who one morning awoke with a melody fully formed in his mind. He rushed to a piano to play it, convinced he must have borrowed it from somewhere, because it seemed too perfect to have come from sleep. Yet no one recognized it, no one claimed it, and so it became his own, eventually known as Yesterday, one of the most famous songs ever written. It was not born in a studio, or through hours of rehearsing scales, but in the quiet hours of dreaming, when the brain stitched together something new from fragments that had been waiting to combine. Or the chemist Auguste Kekulé, who struggled to understand the structure of benzene, a molecule whose atoms refused to arrange themselves neatly in his mind. One night he dreamed of a snake biting its own tail, a symbol ancient and mythic, and in that looping image he saw the answer. Benzene was a ring. Science advanced because the mind, freed from its rigid logic, offered a symbol that contained truth. A dream delivered what conscious calculation could not. The Russian scientist Dmitry Mendeleev told a similar story when creating the periodic table. He worked for days, arranging and rearranging the elements, searching for order. Exhausted, he finally fell asleep and dreamed of the elements falling into place, each finding its rightful position. When he awoke, he wrote down the vision, and the table that still structures chemistry today was born. His waking mind wrestled with the problem, but the dreaming mind, with its freedom to shuffle and recombine, found the solution. These stories are famous, but they are not rare. Writers often wake with ideas for plots that eluded them. Inventors see machines operating in their dreams. Artists glimpse colours and forms they had never painted before. Even ordinary people, with no fame attached to their names, sometimes wake with clarity about a decision, a problem, or a direction in life. Perhaps you've had a dream where a tangled situation suddenly felt simple, or where you rehearsed a solution you could carry back into waking life. Even if the details are strange, the effect can be real. A softened perspective, a new path forward, a sudden sense of possibility. Science offers explanations. During sleep, the brain does not rest idly, but continues to process information. In REM, connections loosen, allowing ideas to cross boundaries they would not normally cross. The strict categories of waking thought relax, and concepts from different parts of your experience can combine. A face you saw on the street may merge with an idea from a book you read, or a tune you hummed may twist together with a rhythm heard years ago, forming something entirely new. Creativity often depends on such unexpected combinations, and dreams provide fertile ground for them to occur. You might think of it as a kind of overnight workshop. The workers of your waking mind, tired and orderly, clock out at the end of the day. Then, in the still hours of night, a new shift arrives. Less disciplined, less rule-bound, but infinitely more inventive. They scatter the puzzle pieces across the floor, rearranging them in ways the day shift never dared. When morning comes, you may find the solution waiting, left for you like a note on your desk. And even if the solution is not practical, it may still be valuable. To dream of flying, of new landscapes, of meeting people who do not exist, stretches your imagination and trains your mind to accept novelty. When you wake, you may find yourself thinking more flexibly, more open to possibility. Dreams remind you that the world is larger than habit, that the mind is capable of wandering beyond the narrow corridors of routine. So the next time you find yourself struggling with a problem, whether it is a stubborn melody, a complex project, or even a personal decision, remember that you do not always need to solve it by sheer force of will. Sometimes it helps to hand it gently to your dreaming self. Think of it as placing the question in a drawer before bed, trusting that overnight, while you sleep, your mind will sift, sort, and perhaps surprise you. You may not wake with a perfect answer, but you may find the edges softened, the tangle loosened, the way forward lit by a new perspective. Dreams, in this sense, are silent partners in the creative process. They do not demand recognition. They do not insist on being credited, but they are there, working alongside you, adding threads to the fabric of your thoughts. And when they hand you a gift, whether a melody, a scientific insight, or simply a new way of seeing, you can smile at the wonder of it. Because while you slept, while you let go, your mind kept moving, exploring impossible solutions and bringing them back to you as quietly as a dawn breeze slipping through an open window. When you close your eyes at the end of a long day, you may think of sleep as simply rest, as shutting down the mind and body to prepare for tomorrow. But beneath that surface quiet, something remarkable is happening. Your dreams are not only stories or puzzles, they're also medicine, subtle therapy sessions woven into the fabric of the night. They take the sharp edges of your emotions, the stress you carried, the fears that clung to you, and soften them, turning them over gently until they are no longer quite as heavy. Sleep scientists sometimes call REM the brain's natural form of overnight emotional therapy, and when you consider the way dreams leave you calmer after turmoil, the phrase begins to feel true. Think about times when you went to bed after an argument, or after a day that felt overwhelming. In waking life, your mind loops the event endlessly, rehearsing what you said, what you should have said, what you fear you will hear again. It's exhausting, like pacing a narrow corridor in circles. But after a night of sleep, those loops are often quieter. The memory may still be there, but it has lost some of its sting, as though the dream world held it under a softer light. This is no coincidence. During REM sleep, stress chemicals such as noradrenaline drop to unusually low levels, creating a safe space for your mind to reprocess difficult experiences without being flooded by panic. You revisit the memory, but without the full weight of the fear, and this allows the emotional intensity to dissolve little by little. In this way, dreams act like a rehearsal space for feelings. The stage may be strange, a conversation replayed in a classroom, or an argument acted out on a train, but the core emotion is still there, being reshaped and rehearsed. You wake feeling as though a burden has lifted, not because the problem is gone, but because your mind has softened it, smoothing its jagged edges. Researchers studying trauma have seen this effect in striking ways. People suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder often report being haunted by nightmares, caught in a loop where the traumatic memory is replayed night after night without resolution. Their REM sleep, which should help to soothe, is disrupted, leaving them raw and anxious. Treatments that restore healthy REM cycles, whether through therapy, medication, or careful sleep hygiene, often reduce the power of those nightmares, allowing the mind to finally process what it had been forced to carry alone. In this sense, dreams are not luxuries or curiosities, but vital parts of emotional health. You may have experienced this in smaller ways. Perhaps you had a nightmare about being chased, waking with your heart racing, only to find that the next night the dream returned in gentler form, maybe transformed into a game of hide and seek. Over time, the emotional charge dissipates. It is as though the mind is gradually teaching itself. This feeling can be survived. Night after night, the dream world becomes a safe rehearsal ground, where fear is encountered in exaggerated but manageable doses until it no longer overwhelms. Even the lighter dreams play a role. Dreams of joy, laughter, or reunion often leave you waking with a sense of calm that carries into the day. These too are forms of therapy, not for wounds, but for resilience. They remind you of what is good, what is possible, what is worth holding on to. A dream of walking with a loved one, even one who has long passed, can restore warmth to the heart in ways that logic alone cannot. The emotional brain does not care whether the moment happened in waking life or dreaming. What matters is that it was felt. This healing role of dreams is not confined to trauma or sorrow. Everyday stress, the quiet accumulation of small frustrations, also finds relief in dreaming. The mind picks up the fragments of annoyance, disappointment, or fatigue, and reshapes them into narratives that are strange but curiously effective. You may not recognize the connection at first, but you wake with more patience, more balance, more capacity to face the day. The theatre of dreams has done its quiet work while you slept. You might think of it as a nightly wash cycle for the emotions. The events of the day are placed in the drum of the dreaming mind, soaked, turned, spun, and softened, until they are cleaner, lighter, easier to carry. The stains may not vanish completely, but the fabric of your emotional life is refreshed. Without this cycle, the load would build and build, leaving you brittle. With it, you find yourself renewed, not only physically but emotionally, ready to meet whatever comes. So tonight, when you lie down with worries pressing at the edges of your mind, you might take comfort in the knowledge that your dreams will work alongside you. They will not erase the challenges, but they will help you carry them, reshaping what feels unbearable into something softer. And in the morning, though the problem may still exist, you may find yourself better able to face it, your emotional reserves restored by the quiet, healing hands of sleep. Dreams are not always pleasant, of course. Nightmares can frighten, can shake you awake in a cold sweat. But even they serve a purpose, reminding you that fear, too, can be rehearsed, that the mind is practicing how to survive. In the long run, even unsettling dreams may be part of the therapy, though they seldom feel like it in the moment. What matters most is remembering that dreams are not meaningless. They are part of your nightly maintenance, as vital as the body's repair of muscles and bones. They are the caretakers of your emotional life, painting even your darkest moments with enough softness that you can carry on. They are healers, working quietly in the background, asking nothing of you but that you sleep and let them do their work. Most of the time, dreams sweep you along like a current. You find yourself on a stage without rehearsal, cast in a play you never auditioned for, and the story unfolds whether you approve or not. You may be chased, you may be flying, you may be sitting in an exam you never studied for, and through it all you accept the strange logic as though it were natural. But every so often something remarkable happens. You realise, while still inside the dream, that you are dreaming. The stage is the same, the scenery just as vivid, yet you know that it is not waking life. This is what people call lucid dreaming. And for many who experience it, the moment feels like stepping into a secret layer of consciousness, where the dream continues but the dreamer gains a measure of gentle control. Lucid dreams can begin in many ways. Sometimes you notice something impossible, a clock that refuses to hold the same time twice, a hallway that loops back on itself, a person who transforms into someone else mid-conversation. In waking life, you would simply feel confused. In a lucid dream, a spark of awareness flickers. This is not real. This is a dream. With that recognition, the dream shifts. The current still flows, but now you're not just being carried. You can paddle, steer, sometimes even choose the destination. The experience is often exhilarating. People describe taking flight, shaping landscapes, or calling upon dream characters to speak with them. Others simply stand still, amazed that they can be both asleep and aware, both participant and observer at once. From a scientific perspective, lucid dreaming is a fascinating hybrid state. The brain is in REM, with all the hallmarks of vivid dreaming, but parts of the prefrontal cortex, the seat of self-awareness and critical thinking, light up briefly. It is as if the stern librarian who usually sleeps through dreams suddenly wakes, peeks in and says, "Ah, so this is where you've been." The result is an awareness that does not dissolve the dream but transforms it into something more conscious, more interactive. For some, lucid dreams become opportunities to practice skills or explore creativity. Athletes have reported rehearsing movements in lucid dreams, finding that the mental rehearsal carries over into waking performance. Musicians have played dream instruments. Painters have seen colours they could not quite replicate on canvas. For others, the experience is more emotional, confronting fears in a safe environment, seeking conversations with loved ones, or simply marvelling at the beauty of a dreamscape that feels limitless. It is important, though, to remember that lucid dreaming is not about control in the sense of domination. You cannot always bend the dream entirely to your will, and even when you can, the effort can feel clumsy, like trying to sculpt clouds with your hands. The gentlest approach is often the most rewarding, letting the dream flow while participating with awareness, guiding when you can, observing when you cannot. In this way, lucid dreaming is less about becoming the master of the dream, and more about becoming a conscious traveller, awake enough to notice but relaxed enough to let the story unfold. Everyday life offers parallels. Think of moments when you realise you're daydreaming, yet instead of shaking yourself out of it, you lean in, shaping the story just enough to make it delightful. Or when you're on a walk and suddenly become acutely aware of your surroundings, the rustle of leaves, the rhythm of your steps, the way the air feels on your skin. Nothing has changed, but awareness itself makes the experience richer. Lucid dreaming is a nocturnal version of this heightened awareness. The dream remains the dream, but your presence within it becomes sharper, more luminous. If you're curious about inviting lucid dreams, there are gentle practices you can try. Keeping a dream journal helps, because writing down dreams each morning trains your brain to notice them more clearly. Reality checks during the day, asking yourself, "Am I dreaming?" while looking at a clock or reading a line of text. Create habits that sometimes carry into sleep, sparking awareness when the clock misbehaves in a dream. Setting an intention before bed, quietly reminding yourself that you would like to notice when you are dreaming, can also plant a seed that blossoms during REM. These practices are not guarantees, but they make the door a little easier to open. It is worth noting too that lucid dreams are not always about joy and adventure. Some people use them to face recurring nightmares, transforming terror into empowerment. A dreamer chased night after night may, upon realizing they are dreaming, turn and confront the pursuer, discovering it melts into harmlessness. The act of facing fear in the dream often translates into confidence in waking life, as though the emotional rehearsal has truly strengthened the mind. In this way, lucid dreaming can be both playground and therapy, both delight and growth. And yet, even if you never experience full lucidity, your dreams are no less valuable. The stories they weave, the emotions they process, the insights they deliver, all of these continue with or without awareness. Lucid dreams are simply one more variation, one more reminder of how flexible consciousness can be. They show that awareness is not an on or off switch, but a spectrum, capable of glowing softly even while the body rests. So if one night you find yourself pausing mid-dream, realizing the strangeness, and whispering to yourself, I'm dreaming, let that awareness be gentle. There is no need to seize control, to force the dream to obey. Instead, float with it, surf upon it, as one might ride a wave, not mastering the ocean, but learning to move with its rhythm. In doing so, you may discover that dreams are not just places you visit unconsciously, but landscapes you can walk through with eyes softly open, carrying a lantern of awareness that lights the way. If you have ever listened to a child describe a dream, you know that their nightly adventures sound more like scenes from a Pixar film than from the quiet theatre of adult sleep. Dragons made of spaghetti slither through kitchens, dogs stand upright and give earnest advice, and toys step into conversations with the ease of a lifelong friends. The boundaries that adults treat as unshakable, gravity, logic, the line between the real and the imagined, melt easily in the minds of children, leaving behind dreams that are wild, colourful, and endlessly surprising. Children dream more vividly and more often than adults, and this is not simply because their imaginations are fresh. Developmental researchers have noted that children spend more time in REM sleep, that luminous stage of dreaming where the brain flickers almost as brightly as it does during waking life. Their minds are busy building neural connections at a staggering pace, and dreams may play a role in that construction. You can think of it as nightly training for imagination, a rehearsal ground where the brain experiments with combinations, tests possibilities, and strengthens its ability to create. Imagine a child who spends the day learning new words, chasing after insects in the yard, and listening to a story about faraway castles. At night, those fragments reassemble into a dream where a beetle recites a poem in a royal hall, while the child rides a horse that can speak in riddles. To an adult it sounds nonsensical, but for the child's brain it is practice, taking pieces of reality and shuffling them together in endless variations. Each shuffle is another step in learning flexibility, in preparing the mind to solve problems, to imagine futures, to weave stories. There is humour in these dreams too, often unintentionally. A child might report that they were chased by broccoli wearing roller skates, or that the family car sprouted wings and flew them to school late at night. Such images make adults laugh, but they are also reminders of the child's creative freedom. Where adults may be tethered by logic, children fly on dream wings that owe nothing to consistency. Their worlds are laboratories where anything can be tried, and laughter is part of the experiment. Parents sometimes notice that children's dreams can be startlingly intense. Night terrors, though technically different from ordinary dreams, show how powerful a child's sleep world can be. A little one may wake screaming, eyes wide open yet unseeing, trapped in a storm of emotion they cannot explain. Though these episodes fade as the child grows, they remind us how real dreams feel to young minds. The boundary between inner and outer is thinner, the sense of what is only a dream less certain. To the child, the spaghetti dragon is not merely funny, it is alive, threatening, or comforting, depending on the moment. Cultural traditions have often paid close attention to children's dreams. In some communities, children are believed to carry messages in their sleep, unclouded by the doubts of adulthood. Their dreams are listened to carefully, recorded, even treated as guidance for the family. Whether or not one accepts that view, it points to a truth adults often forget. Children experience their dreams with a sincerity and immediacy that gives them power. They do not question whether the dog truly spoke. They remember what it said. And while adults may dismiss these nightly stories as nonsense, researchers suggest that dreams help children process their daily experiences just as they do for grown-ups. A child learning to ride a bike may dream of balancing on a thin rope, practicing the feeling of stability in exaggerated form. A child making new friends at school may dream of parties with endless guests, rehearsing the social world in imaginative play. In this way, children's dreams are both fantastical and functional, both playful cartoons and essential rehearsals. It's worth noting too how much joy children can take from their dreams. Many report waking eager to share them, recounting details with wide eyes and excitement. Unlike adults, who often feel embarrassed or dismissive about their dreams, children treat them as treasures, stories worth telling at breakfast. In their innocence, they remind us that dreaming is not a burden or a mystery to be solved, but a gift to be enjoyed, a nightly adventure offered freely to every sleeper. As adults, listening to children describe their dreams can be a lesson in perspective. Where we might see chaos, they see coherence. Where we might expect logic, they revel in surprise. And where we might forget our own nightly wanderings, they carry theirs proudly into the day. To share in those stories is to glimpse the world through fresher eyes, to remember that imagination is not just something you use, it is something you live inside every night. So when you hear a child describe riding on the back of a spaghetti dragon, or holding counsel with talking dogs, perhaps resist the urge to dismiss it with a smile. Instead, pause and recognize that within that strange tale lies the essence of dreaming itself, boundless, inventive, unafraid of the impossible. Children show us what dreams can be when they are unfiltered, when they are allowed to run free. They remind us that dreaming is not just about sleep, it is about wonder and the way wonder itself shapes a life. As the years pass and childhood melts into adulthood, the dreams that once overflowed with spaghetti dragons and talking animals begin to shift in tone. They do not lose their strangeness entirely. Dreams always have a way of bending the edges of reality, but they grow heavier, more grounded, more tied to the demands and entanglements of daily life. Instead of castles in the clouds, adults often find themselves wandering through mazes of office corridors, sitting in endless meetings, or rushing toward deadlines that seem impossible to meet. The dream world, still magical in its own right, becomes a mirror for the anxieties and responsibilities of waking life. One of the most common dream motifs among adults is the sense of being late. You might dream of running toward a train station, only to find that the platform stretches endlessly, the train always just out of reach. Or you dream of trying to get to an appointment, but every road you take twists into another detour. The feeling is familiar. The sinking stomach, the rising panic, the dread of being unprepared. Psychologists note that these dreams often surface during periods of stress, when obligations press from all sides. They are not literal rehearsals of missed trains or forgotten classes, but symbolic rehearsals of the adult fear of failing in responsibilities, of not measuring up to the expectations of work, family, or society. Another recurring theme is the dream of being lost. You may wander through hallways that never end, searching for a room that always shifts, or find yourself driving through a city that looks almost familiar but never quite matches the map in your head. These dreams too reflect the inner landscape of adulthood, when choices are many, paths uncertain, and the way forward often obscured. They embody the quiet truth that much of adult life is improvisation, a constant attempt to navigate responsibilities and relationships without a clear guide. The dream captures that uncertainty, replaying it in symbolic form. And then there are the dreams of work itself. Entire meetings unfold in the middle of the night, complete with awkward small talk and flickering PowerPoint slides. Papers pile up on desks that never existed. Emails demand replies in rooms lit by the dull glow of fluorescent lights. Some people even report waking up exhausted after dreaming that they worked all night, only to face the real tasks waiting for them in the morning. These dreams may seem cruel, but they are simply another form of the brain processing stress, integrating the tasks and worries of the day into its nightly workshop. Yet it would be unfair to reduce adult dreams only to stress and burden. Alongside the anxieties are moments of insight, of creativity, of quiet joy. Adults too dream of flying, of reunions with friends long lost, of conversations that heal old wounds. These dreams often arrive when the waking self is too busy, too preoccupied to address such needs. The dream world steps in to provide what waking life withholds. A person estranged from a sibling may dream of reconciliation. A parent overwhelmed by responsibility may dream of carefree play. In this way, adult dreams do not only reflect burdens, they also balance them, offering glimpses of what the heart still longs for. Science offers gentle explanations. As adults, we spend our days managing complex networks of obligation and memory. The brain during sleep rehearses and reorganizes these networks, producing dreams that echo our waking concerns. The hippocampus files away experiences, the amygdala colors them with emotion, and the cortex weaves them into stories. The result may not always be logical, but it is often meaningful. Dreams are not simply stress made strange. They're emotional processing, imaginative rehearsal, and sometimes creative renewal. Everyday life gives us countless examples of how this works. Think of the person preparing for a presentation who dreams of standing before a silent crowd, words vanishing from their mind. The dream is not cruel. It is practice, a way for the mind to rehearse fear so that waking life feels less overwhelming. Or the teacher who dreams of classrooms where students speak in riddles, desks float in the air, and lessons never end. It is not prophecy, but it captures the essence of the day's work and the emotions tied to it. For many adults, recurring dreams become companions, returning again and again to the same themes. The missed train, the shifting hallways, the unfinished exams. These motifs act like signals, gentle reminders from the subconscious that something remains unresolved. While the waking mind may ignore its own stress, the dreaming mind insists replaying the theme until it is noticed, softened, or transformed. And yet, even in their frustrations, adult dreams remind us of something tender, that we are still human, still vulnerable, still carrying emotions that need tending. They are the mind's way of saying, "I noticed what you tried to ignore. I am working on it with you." If you wake from a dream of being unprepared or lost, perhaps it is not only anxiety but also care, the brain taking the time to rehearse, to soften, to prepare you for the challenges you must face. So while childhood dreams may dazzle with their magic, and elder dreams may soothe with their wisdom, adult dreams hold their own quiet importance. They may feel like mazes, but they are mazes designed to help you find your way. They may trap you in midnight meetings, but they are also opportunities to rehearse, to process, to balance the weight of the day. And every so often they hand you a moment of lightness, a flight, a reunion, a scene of impossible beauty, reminding you that even in the busiest years, wonder still finds its way into the night. As life moves into its later chapters, the landscape of dreams changes once more. The wild colours of childhood, the tangled mazes of adulthood, give way to something slower, quieter, and often more reflective. Elder, dreams tend to carry a softness, a sense of looking back, as though the mind itself has become a careful archivist, leafing through the pages of a long book. Instead of rushing through endless corridors or flying through impossible skies, the dreamer may find themselves sitting at a table with familiar faces, revisiting old homes, or walking slowly down paths that feel like memory as much as invention. Researchers who study aging and sleep note that the amount of REM tends to decline with age, and this may partly explain why dreams in later life are often less frequent or less vividly remembered. Yet those that do surface often carry more weight, as if condensed, like distilled drops of experience. Elders often describe dreams that weave together moments from across decades, childhood scenes mingling with adult memories, people long gone appearing alongside those still present. These dreams feel like reviews, not hurried montages but lingering revisitations, where the past is brought close enough to touch again. Imagine a dream of walking through a childhood home, noticing details you'd forgotten, the pattern of wallpaper in a hallway, the sound of a creaky stair, the way sunlight once fell across a kitchen table. Or a dream where you sit with loved ones who have long since passed, sharing a meal in perfect peace, the conversation unremarkable yet deeply comforting. These dreams may not feel spectacular, but they can leave the dreamer waking with a sense of integration, of continuity, as though the threads of a lifetime have been gathered into one gentle weave. There is often symbolism in these dreams as well, but it tends to be quieter, less dramatic than the floods and serpents of youth. Doors may appear, opening onto gardens or landscapes that stretch into the horizon. Journeys may take place, not frantic chases but steady walks, with companions who offer no explanation but whose presence feels reassuring. In many cultures, such dreams have been interpreted as rehearsals for the final journey, the mind preparing for mortality in the same way it once rehearsed for school exams or work responsibilities. Whether or not one believes in that interpretation, the sense of closure, of symbolic preparation, often resonates with those who experience it. Psychologists sometimes describe these later dreams as part of life review, a natural process of integrating the story of one's existence, just as the brain in youth uses dreams to practice imagination, and the brain in adulthood uses them to process stress. The elder mind may use dreams to look back, to make peace, to find coherence in the many chapters already written. They are not just memories replayed, they are memories transformed, given symbolic closure in ways waking life may never have allowed. There is tenderness in this stage of dreaming. A grandmother may dream of holding her child as an infant, even as that child is now middle-aged. A grandfather may dream of playing with friends long, since gone, laughter echoing across a field that has not existed for decades. These moments are not only nostalgic but restorative. They remind the dreamer that their life is not scattered pieces but a whole, that every joy and sorrow remains part of the tapestry. Waking from such dreams can bring tears, but often they are soft tears, born of gratitude rather than grief. Of course, not all elder dreams are peaceful. Some still carry anxiety or unease, perhaps replaying unresolved conflicts or lingering fears. But even here, the quality often shifts. The nightmares are less frantic, more contemplative, as though the mind itself has learned to step back, to observe rather than to be overwhelmed. What once felt like a chase may now feel like a conversation. What once felt like drowning may now appear as a quiet river, crossed with patience. Everyday life reflects this same change. With age often comes a slowing down, a tendency to reflect more than to rush. The dream world mirrors this, offering nights that are not so much battles or playgrounds, but gatherings, reviews, rehearsals of meaning. To dream in later life is often to sit with oneself, to accept the story that has been written, and to prepare gently for what lies beyond. There is comfort in recognizing this arc. Childhood dreams expand imagination, adult dreams process responsibility, and elder dreams weave it all together into something coherent. At every stage, dreams serve the needs of the mind and heart, and in the final stretch, they become companions of reflection, offering closure not in the sense of endings, but in the sense of integration, of acceptance. So if you find yourself, or someone you love, Speaking of dreams that revisit old homes, old friends, or journeys toward horizons, listen with care. These are not random fragments, nor are they necessarily predictions. They are the mind's way of telling its story, of finding peace in the narrative of a life lived. They are dreams as memory, dreams as rehearsal, dreams as gentle farewell. In this way, elder dreams are not lesser for being quieter. They may be the most profound of all, reminding us that in the theatre of the night, even the final acts are written with tenderness, with grace, with a kind of beauty that lingers long after the dream has faded. By now we have wandered through many landscapes, the sparkling imaginings of childhood, the tangled mazes of adulthood, the soft reflections of later years, and the shared symbols and speculative portals that stretch beyond the self. But the most important dreamscape is always your own, the nightly universe that belongs only to you. It is a world that opens without ticket or invitation, offering you stories, images, and feelings that no one else will ever see in exactly the same way. To become a dream explorer is not about mastering that world or solving its riddles. It is about noticing, recording, and honouring the journeys you already take, whether or not you remember them fully. One of the simplest tools for exploring dreams is a journal. Many people keep a small notebook by their bed, ready to capture the fleeting details that so often vanish with the morning light. At first, you may write only fragments, running through water, met an old friend, colours like fire. Even a single word can be enough to catch the thread. Over time, as your mind realises that you're paying attention, the dreams often grow more vivid in recall, as though the stage crew of your inner theatre is pleased to know its efforts are being noticed. What begins as fragments may soon expand into full narratives, pages of nightly adventures waiting to be revisited. Recording dreams is not about interpretation in the strict sense. It is less about finding a universal dictionary of symbols and more about noticing your own patterns, your own themes. Perhaps you dream often of houses, and over time you notice that the condition of the house mirrors your emotional state. Perhaps you dream of water, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, and begin to connect it with your shifting moods. These observations are personal cartography, the mapping of your inner terrain. They are not rules but discoveries, the way an explorer might note the rivers and mountains of a land that no one else has charted. Dream exploration can also be about savouring, not just studying. Sometimes a dream is simply beautiful, a landscape glowing with impossible light, a conversation with someone you love, a moment of laughter or awe. Writing it down, or even just sitting quietly to remember it, is a way of keeping the gift. Dreams may be fleeting, but by honouring them, you give them a second life in memory. They become part of your waking story, not just night fragments that dissolve with dawn. If you wish to go further, you can practice small techniques to invite richer dream recall. Set an intention before sleep, something as simple as whispering to yourself, "I will remember a dream tonight." This gentle act of attention often makes a difference, as though the mind responds to the invitation. When you wake, resist the urge to leap instantly into the day. Linger for a moment, eyes closed, and see what fragments still float in the half-light of memory. A colour, a place, a word. Write it down before it fades. These practices are not about control, but about opening a door. And if you ever experience lucid dreams, awareness blooming within the dream itself, your journal becomes even more precious. Recording these moments helps anchor them, letting you revisit not only the story, but the remarkable sensation of being awake while asleep. Even without lucidity, the practice of exploring dreams builds a bridge between night and day, between unconscious and conscious, reminding you that the two are not separate worlds but continuous parts of a single mind. Everyday life often mirrors this exploration. Just as you might keep a travel diary to remember journeys to distant places, you can keep a dream diary to honour the voyages you take without leaving your bed. Just as you might revisit an old photo album and smile at moments you had forgotten, you can reread your dreams months later and notice patterns you missed, themes that have grown, insights that only time revealed. To become a dream explorer is not to conquer territory, but to notice that you are already a traveller. And perhaps most important of all, dream exploration can foster a deeper sense of self-compassion. When you notice the fears that recur in your dreams, you may realise they are not flaws but signals, gentle reminders of what still needs care. When you see the joys that return, the laughter, the reunions, the flights, you may recognise the strengths and desires that sustain you. Dreams become not puzzles to solve, but mirrors to accept, reflections of your inner life given in symbolic form. So tonight, when you close your eyes, you might imagine yourself not only as a sleeper, but as an explorer setting sail. Your bed is the boat, your mind the ocean, your dreams the distant islands you'll visit. Some will be small and strange, some vast and unforgettable, some so fleeting you barely touch the shore before you drift away. But each one belongs to you, each one is part of your map, each one an invitation to notice the deeper dimension of yourself. And so, after wandering through all these landscapes of the night, from the playful worlds of children's dreams to the mazes of adulthood, from the quiet reflections of elder sleep to the shared symbols and speculative portals beyond, we arrive at the final pause in our journey. It is here, in the hush before sleep takes you again, that the question we began with returns. Are dreams merely random sparks, or are they meaningful mysteries? Science tells us of neurons firing, of chemicals shifting, of memory systems flickering on and off. Philosophy tells us of archetypes, of collective unconsciousness, of parallel worlds and awareness unbound. And your own experience tells you of dreams that vanish like mist and dreams that stay with you forever. The truth may not be one or the other, but both, layered together in ways we cannot yet fully understand. Perhaps the better way to think of dreams is not as problems to be solved, but as companions to be accepted. They arrive whether or not you ask for them, carrying fragments of your day, echoes of your past, symbols older than history, and possibilities that stretch into the unknown. Some are nonsense, stitched from scraps of memory into patchwork stories. Some are healing, washing sorrow in softer light. Some are gifts, offering melodies, insights, or inspiration. And some are mysteries, carrying a weight that cannot be explained but can still be felt. Dreams are all of these at once, because dreams are as vast and flexible as the mind itself. If you carry nothing else from this exploration, let it be this. Your dreams matter not because they predict the future or because they always reveal hidden truths, but because they are part of you. They are the nightly expression of your mind at play, at work, at healing, at remembering, at imagining. To honour them is to honour yourself, to accept that even in rest you're alive with story. Whether you write them down, share them with others, or simply smile at their strangeness before letting them go, you are acknowledging the deeper dimension of who you are, and maybe, just maybe, the most profound answers lie not in whether dreams are random or purposeful, but in how they remind you to wonder. Wonder is often neglected in waking life, buried under schedules and routines, but dreams restore it, bringing back the impossible, the magical, the absurd and the tender. They whisper that life is not only what you see before you, but also what you imagine, what you feel, what you remember in fleeting fragments. They open a doorway each night, a threshold into a space where logic relaxes and possibility grows. So as you lie here, perhaps already drifting, you might let yourself see sleep not as absence, but as passage. The moment you close your eyes is the moment you step into a doorway, into a house with endless rooms, into a garden that grows in silence, into a sea that carries you without effort. The door closes behind you and opens again in the morning, but what happens inside is part of the story of being human, a story as old as the first dreamer under the first night sky. And when you wake tomorrow, whether you remember your dreams or not, you can carry a small piece of that wonder with you. You can know that during the night your mind travelled, healed and created, that it rehearsed and reflected, that it touched mysteries too deep to name. You are more than your waking hours. You're also your nights, your dreams, your private universes. So let this be the gentle farewell of tonight's journey. You do not need to hold on to every word. You do not need to solve every question. All you need to do is rest, to let the doorway open once more, to step quietly into the soft unknown. Somewhere inside, the dreams are already waiting. The laughter, the symbols, the mysteries, the healers, the flights. They are yours, always, part of your own deeper dimension. And if your eyes are already heavy, if the sentences are slipping into the blur between waking and sleep, that is exactly as it should be. You're not missing the ending, you're entering it. Because the real conclusion is not here in words, but in the dreams you're about to have. Dreams that will carry you onward long after this voice fades into silence. Sleep peacefully, dream gently, and remember, the doorway is always open.